Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is a listener request, and they actually asked for kind of like a general outline / format that they could use to approach improving 1-rep max strength. So in general, the email was, I want to improve my 1-rep max on like my main lifts, and I would like to know how to go about doing so, but they didn't want to necessarily pay for a specific program for that, and or they didn't want something so specific that it only applied for like one lift. This person's a coach, so they were wanting kind of something that they could, kind of like ideas or concepts that they could use for all of their clients, rather than something super specific that they couldn't apply. So I'm going to try to go through this, and it is going to be more general. Like, there'll be good specifics in here, but it is going to be more general than, say, picking specifically bench press or specifically squat. And we have had people request bench press, so I'm going to make that one. Sorry for the delay, but I figured this would be a good one to kind of start with, and then I'll fine-tune it for the bench press one. Okay, so when we want to improve a 1-rep max in strength, and we can use kind of squat, bench, deadlift as like the basic ones. Some people might include overhead pressing. Some people might have Olympic lifts like snatch and clean and press. Some people might be strongman, so they want to improve like a log press. There's a lot of variables to what you might be 1-rep maxing. And the stuff we're going to talk about here would improve also like sets of 2, 3, 4, 5 reps. So it doesn't have to be necessarily just singles, but it is intended to improve kind of maximal strength output, which is typically tested, at fewer repetitions. So I'm not going to necessarily test a 20-rep max and consider, use that to consider my overall strength. That's more of an endurance thing than a strength thing. So when we look at this, there are things we can address in our training, and then there are things we can address outside of our training that will influence our 1-rep max. So we're going to go through the in-training stuff first, and then we'll go through some of the outside of the training things. So in our training, there are generally kind of 3 things we would want to think of that can contribute to 1-rep max strength. The most common thing we're going to be aware of is just physical strength. Am I physically strong enough? So if I want to get stronger, I will try to if I want to move more weight, I will try to get physically stronger. That is one area. Another thing that's another common one we would typically think of, and when I say it, you'll go, oh yeah, of course, is our ability in technique. So maybe I don't have to be physically stronger, but if I improve my technique, my 1-rep max would go up. Okay? So obviously we'd want to do both, but it shows that they are independent things. So I can get physically stronger, and that can make my 1-rep max go up, even if I keep the same quality of technique. And if I keep the same quality of physical strength, but I improve my technique, my 1-rep max will go up. And then the third one is kind of like mental or mindset. So a lot of times people just kind of don't do well mentally under 1-rep maxes. They get nervous, they kind of get flustered, they forget cues that they normally would never forget, and it just kind of like they shut themselves down, they get in their own way mentally. So we would look at physical, technical, and mental strength when we want to look at our overall strength for a lift. Okay? Let's look at physical strength first, because that is typically where most people are going to look. Is they'll say, oh, I want to get a bigger bench. What exercise should I do? So most people are going to think of that. Now, with today's day and age and people being more aware of like online coaching, and there's more resources out there in the world, like in articles, YouTube videos, and whatnot, technique quality is more well known now. So I do get sometimes people will request, hey, would you mind like looking at my bench video and telling me like if there's something I can do better? So they want to look at technique. So you do get that. It's much more rare compared to like physical strength, but you do get those kind of requests. So in regards to physical development, okay, what you want to do is identify your physical weaknesses within the main lift, and then address those with specific accessory lifts. So let's take the bench press, okay. The 2 most common areas of physical development people are going to look at is chest strength and tricep strength. Now, there are plenty of others, but I want to try to keep this simple rather than listing like a bunch of stuff and getting kind of everybody confused, okay? So what I would want to do is I would do bench press workouts, and I'm going to kind of blitz through a lot of information here. So if there's anything specific you want more information about, shoot us an email, brutalirongym@gmail.com. So if I have to identify my own weaknesses, one of the ways of doing that is doing really high volume workout, where I might do 10 sets of 5 reps. And there are 5 reps that are like, feels like murder every time. I'm not going to be able to do the same exact weight for all 10 sets. So I'm going to pick set 1, what's the heaviest weight I can do for 5 reps? Then set 2, what's the heaviest weight I can do for 5 reps? I might have to actually take weight off the bar. Then set 3, maybe I can do the same weight again for 5. Set 4, I'm starting to get fatigued. Maybe I got to take more weight off the bar. You can do 10 sets of 5 reps. Okay? And then the next day, or even maybe that night, or definitely by 2 days later, what is the most sore body part on you? If it's the back of your arms, your triceps, then that tells you that they are potentially the weaker link. Now, there's caveats out the wazoo of this, because sometimes the sorest muscle is the one that was doing the most work, and it might actually be your strength. Okay? So you have to kind of experiment with what I'm telling you, try it, and then see if it worked. But what you would do is you do a very high volume workout, okay, maybe 10 sets of 5 as an example, where each set is the most you can do. You're going to then say, okay, what's the most sore thing, a day or 2 later, and then if it's triceps, I want to then consider that maybe my triceps are the weakest part. Okay, so now that you've identified what might be your weakest part, you want to address it with specific accessories. Now, if the weakest part is disproportionately small, so say you have a well-developed chest, but you kind of have small arms, then what you want to do is you want to focus on hypertrophy or muscle growth for that weakness. So if the weakness is the triceps, you want to train your triceps under the time under tension ranges for muscular development. Okay, so we have done podcasts in the past that talked about kind of time under tension or rep ranges that are specific for what outcome you want. So in podcast number, now that I'm looking up and waiting for the computer to download, what you want to look for is, so it's number 214, understanding rep ranges and expected results. So I'll write the link out for you guys, so in the description. But podcast 214 tells you what the muscle building rep ranges and kind of time under tension is. In general, that's going to be like 30 to 40 seconds of time under tension. There's a bigger range, but that's a pretty good specific range for you. So you would do your tricep focused exercises, okay, with very isolative type movements. So I might just want to do a tricep press down on the cable machine. And I'm going to do it for 30 to 40 seconds. So that would be a very good accessory to help me build up specifically the triceps. And if they're behind in size, that is one of the, like a large sign that it would be a weak muscle. And by increasing its size to be proportional with the rest of the muscles, it can then increase its ability to be strong. So a small muscle's capacity for strength is smaller than a large muscle's capacity for strength. So if the muscle that you want to be stronger is smaller than everything else, you want to bring its size up and then start training it more specifically for strength. So you want to focus on hypertrophy first, then strength second. Okay? And you want to do very isolative type movements because you want to get that damn thing to grow. So you don't want other things getting involved. You don't want other things stealing some of the results away. So you want to be very isolative. You want to train it under hypertrophy, muscle building, time under tension ranges, which is like 30 to 40 seconds-ish. And you would do progression schemes which are towards muscular development, which means over the course of, say, I typically give people specific exercises for 4 weeks at a time. So maybe we'll do cable tricep press downs with a rope grip because that hits the specific head of the triceps that weakest for them. Okay, so we'll say like a neutral grip tends to hit the weakest part of the tricep. So we would do rope grip tricep press downs on a cable for 4 weeks. In the 4 weeks, we would try to progress are volume within 30 to 40 seconds. So they would do sets of 30 to 40 seconds, and let's say at first they used 100 pounds for 40 seconds. The next time they come in, since they were at the top of the time range, they don't want to use 100 pounds and now go 45 or 50 seconds because they're getting outside of the muscle building time range. So if they were at the top of the range, they want to then move up in weight. So maybe they move to 110 pounds or 120 pounds, and now all of a sudden they can only do 30 seconds. So they're still within the range, but they're now at the bottom of the range. So the next time they come in, they might keep 120 pounds and maybe be able to try to get 35 seconds or even 40 seconds. So they can improve in time under tension and or weight. So they just want a volume progression. So over 4 weeks, they're going to try to make that increase every single week. Then in week 5, we might switch out to a different type of neutral grip type tricep focus, which might be like dumbbell skull crushers. Okay? A little bit of a change of position, but it still keeps the specific head of the tricep that we're trying to focus on. And again, they're going to focus on 4 weeks of progressions on volume within 30 to 40 seconds. Okay. So, by the way, this is my idea of being summarizing. So this is probably really specific, but I hope it's giving you enough to kind of work with. Now, if the weakness that you've identified, if it's appropriately sized for the rest of the body, it kind of doesn't look like it's lagging behind in size, that means that it's just weak, okay? Its capacity for strength is there because the muscle size is there, it just isn't strong. So you want to use strength-specific time under tensions, which we would estimate to be mostly around 20 to 30 seconds of time under tension. So you would do time under tension ranges of 20 to 30 seconds, and typically these are better used for compound movements. So I might do a close grip bench press, which focuses on my triceps. Okay? Since I don't need them to get bigger, I just want to make them stronger, so I'm going to use them with really heavy weight-based exercises. So, for example, I can move more weight on a close grip bench press than I can on a cable rope grip tricep press down. So if I want strength to be the focus, I want to use a heavy variation, okay, of a movement that's a tricep-based movement. And then, I would do that for 4 weeks. Now, the progression scheme for strength doesn't include overall volume as much as it includes increased weight load. So I might do 30 seconds of, say, 100 pounds. Then I'm going to move to 110 pounds next week. Maybe I can only get 26 seconds. I'm going to move to 120 pounds, 100 and whatever. I'm going to move up in weight again on the 3rd week. I might only get 22 seconds. I'll move up in weight on the 4th week. Maybe I only get 18 or 20 seconds. So I'm going to let my time under tension die while it stays within the range. So I'm going to start at whatever the weight I can do for the highest part of the time range. And then each week I'm going to increase weight and try my best to try to stay within the range within 4 weeks. After 4 weeks, I might switch from close grip bench press to maybe dips, weighted dips. Because I can still do a heavy weight with weighted dips. Yes, my chest helps out a little bit, maybe my front delts help out a little bit, but it's still a tricep-focused exercise. So that's kind of how you would break this down, is you would identify a specific weakness, muscular weakness. If that muscular weakness identified is disproportionately smaller than everything else, you want to train it like a bodybuilder. Bring it up in size, okay, with very isolative type movements and progressions of just overall volume, which is increased reps or time under tension. Well, it's the same thing. So increased time under tension or weight. If the muscle I want to get to catch up, if the weakness muscle, if it's proportionally balanced with everything else, it's just weak, then I want to use strength time under tension ranges, which is 20 to 30 seconds. I want to use more compound movements that allow me to use a lot of weight, okay? And I want to do progression schemes specific to strength, which is an increase in weight load over 4 weeks, not time under tension. Okay. So that was actually my summary. So now that's how you do it all by yourself. Maybe you can send your videos to somebody like me or a coach or trainer, or you have a friend who kind of maybe knows a little bit more about training than you do. You can have them look at your lift and maybe they can identify it for you. So like we said at the beginning, is you might do a workout of 10 sets of 5 just to make everything so beat up and sore, and you might train the sorest muscle. I would say go for 12 weeks, okay? So if triceps seems to be the sorest thing, you would do 3 units of 4 weeks. So you would do a tricep exercise for 4 weeks with progressions, switch to another variation for 4 weeks with progressions, switch to another variation for 4 weeks with progressions. Then you might want to take a week to kind of deload, let your body calm down, and then you can retest your max. And if it doesn't improve, that means that potentially your triceps weren't the weakest thing. So maybe they were sore because they were overworked, and it was actually your chest that wasn't doing enough work. So your triceps actually were doing too much. You would then take 12 weeks, focus on the chest in the same manner, retest your max. So yes, this means I'm telling you have to do like 3 months of stuff as a practice and experiment, and maybe it won't work. Okay? Now, I doubt that if you focused really hard for 3 months on your triceps that you're not going to get some jump in your 1 rep max. You probably will, okay? But it might only be like maybe 5 pounds or 10 pounds. And then you're going to wonder, I wonder if I can get more if I focus on the other muscle. So you're going to try the other muscle. Maybe all of a sudden you get a 15 or 20 pound max jump, okay? So sometimes this does mean that you're going to be experimenting for 6 months before you even know what the hell you're supposed to be doing. And that is what happens when you do everything by yourself. That's actually a pretty educated time frame and a pretty realistic time frame in terms of what's actually going to take time to produce results. Okay? So that is the benefits of having somebody look at your lifts. They might be able to tell you all this stuff faster and save you some of the experimenting. But again, the person who asked for this was looking for general approach. So if they're watching a client lift and they're like, crap, I don't really know what their weakness is, what do I do? Well, pick one of the muscles that's involved with the lift. That's your best guess of weakness. Attack it for 12 weeks and see what happens. So let's say, for example, in squats. Maybe the person has very large quads. They have no butt whatsoever. Well, prioritize their glutes for 12 weeks and the squat is probably going to go up. Okay? Then the next 12 weeks, you can experiment maybe with the hamstrings. Then the next 12 weeks, what the hell? Throw in the quads and give that a try. Okay? So you can experiment and play around with it, but if you follow these progressions and exercise selections, you're going to get some result. It's just what's going to get you the biggest result. That would be our kind of like our hope and our dream and our goal. Okay? So that's how we kind of progress things in the physical manner. Now, workout structure, which is part of like our physical approach, typically what we like to do is have like their warm-up, okay, for the workout, like before they do their main lift. You want to have them do some kind of a weakness associated with their technique. So this is going to be something we'll get into here a little bit more in a second. But let's say in bench press and they have a hard time keeping their lats tight. You might have them do pull-ups or pull-downs supersetted with their first warm-up sets of the bench press. That's going to activate and get a good mind-muscle connection with their lats, and it can maybe improve their lat control during the bench press. Okay? So that's typically what I like to do is I like to start the workout with something associated with a technique weakness. And that can be a physical weakness or a mental weakness. So like we said, a physical weakness there would be like the lats being able to stay engaged. Maybe the mental approach is, they just have a fear of heavy squats. So maybe you have them in their warm-ups work up to a really heavy squat walkout. So a lot of my clients are going to be laughing because I make them do this, is before their first working set, we load the bar up to 100 or 110% of their 1 rep max. They have to pick it up, walk back out as if they're going to squat it, kind of breathe and brace for 10 seconds, walk it back into the rack and rack it. That gets them under something really scary right away, and then the rest of their working sets don't feel so scary. So that is a way of approaching mental weakness as part of your warm-up. Okay? So you want to address that stuff in some type of warm-up manner. You then have the main lift, and you're going to focus on a variation that allows you to still address technique appropriate for the competition, like type lift. So let's look at this, for example, here in technique strength. So we talked about physical development. Now what about technical development? Is we want to try to identify any technical weaknesses they have. Okay? So, for example, not keeping their lats tight during the bench press is a technical weakness. Maybe when they squat, they kind of drift forward into their toes and they're not keeping their weight in their heels. That's a technical weakness. Maybe when they're doing a conventional deadlift, they have their head cranked up like they're trying to stare at the ceiling, which is a technical weakness. Okay, so you want to try to identify, are they doing anything in their technique that's kind of screwing them up? And if you can find something, you want to use that, as we said, as part of their warm-up. Then you also want to use a main lift variation that includes that technical weakness as it would be used in the competition. So, for example, let's say a technical weakness that a person has in a deadlift is their starting position. So they tend to have a trouble with over squatting their start position. So their knees shoot out in front of their forearms. If they're a conventional deadlifter, their knees will be out in front of their forearms when they're trying to start. So all of a sudden when they go to push, they get kind of like they fall forward, their butt shoots up in the air before the bar even leaves the ground. Maybe with sumo deadlift, they don't have proper hip mobility or hip strength, so their knees are caved inward and their shins are actually at a forward angle when they go to leave the floor, meaning that they're not going to have a very efficient pull. So the shins need to be straight up and down, the knees need to be flared out, so that way when they drive off the ground, their shins are vertical and the bar can shoot straight up and they can use their upper inner hamstrings and glutes to kind of drive the bar and squeeze the lockout. So you would try to find out if they have any weakness in position, okay, which is technique weakness, and then you want to make sure you use a main lift that includes that. So let's say, for example, somebody has improper upper back tightness during squats. And when they have the barbell on their back, they kind of have a hard time like pulling the bar into their back. They have a hard time bracing. Well, if I make them do front squats as their main variation, that doesn't help. It might challenge the musculature of the upper body, okay, the upper back, but it's not going to help them mimic the technique they're going to need in a competition lift. So you want to make sure that your main lift variation that you're doing, your big strength movement, allows them to practice their specific technique weakness as specifically needed in a competition. Okay, so if they're doing a front squat or a safety squat bar, that's going to change the positioning that they would use in a meet. That's going to be different than the positioning they'd use in the meet. So therefore, it's not going to transfer over whenever they have to go do it in a meet. So you might have made them physically stronger, but you didn't do anything that developed their technical strength. So you have to make sure that the main lift variation you use for overall development of that lift has technique specificness in it. Okay? So, when we were saying in your workout structure that the first thing you would do is some type of warm-up that involves like a technical weakness or mental weakness or even a physical weakness. So like that, like the tight lats, for example. Then when you go to the main lift, you would make sure you pick something that has that technique component involved. So like we said, we'd want to do, if they have trouble with their upper back, you want to make sure they do a type of squat that still involves proper positioning of the upper back. And then you would train the volume, the amount of sets and reps and workload they do based on whatever else they needed. Okay? So you have the technique component already included. Then let's say that they just need confidence under really heavy weights. So maybe you have them do very heavy singles between 85 and say 92.5%. And that's something that they can probably do for doubles or triples, but you're going to make them do it for singles, get them used to that under that heavy weight load. So, as they're doing their main lift, they're actually increasing their technique skill because you have a technique-specific variation. You're improving their mindset because that's what you identified as a weakness. And then, obviously, the amount of volume and stuff you're doing is developing their physical strength. So, with that one selected exercise, you're improving technique, mental, and physical. So that's how you're going to make the fastest progress, is can you pick exercise variations that attack as many issues as possible. So rather than picking a variation that only does one thing, you're going to fall behind compared to trainers or trainees who use exercises that pair multiple purposes. So this is really important because that's how you make faster progress. Then after that, so you have your warm-up kind of stuff, you have your main lift thing, then you go into your accessories and you want to do the heaviest accessory to the lightest accessory. So let's say, for example, in a workout I have dips and cable tricep press downs. I would do dips first, cable tricep press downs second. Okay? So that's the workout structure you would use, is technique kind of weakness, physical weakness, mental weakness kind of warm-up thing that kind of gets their mind ready for the workout, their body ready for the workout, their technique ready for the workout. You do the main lift that kills as many birds with one stone as you can. Then you go into your accessories and you do the heaviest to the lightest accessory. Cool. Okay. Now, technique stuff is most often addressed well with the warm-ups and the main lift variation, but you can also include addressing technique within your accessories. So, for example, there's a female I'm helping right now, and she wants to learn how to improve her foot positioning in the bench press and her leg drive development. We also need to just get her physical damage and workload of her pressing muscles. So after she does her barbell work, she goes and does dumbbell work. Well, in the dumbbell work, we gave her a bench setup and a body position setup where she has her upper back braced against the bench, but she has absolutely no butt support. So all she has touching the ground is her 2 feet, and her upper back is bent into the bench. So that automatically activates her legs. So while she's doing dumbbell presses to get the physical development and physical damage we need from that exercise, we can also throw in a technical element of teaching her how to use her leg drive for balance and support. So again, how do you kill as many birds as you can with one stone? So that is the choice there. So you can see if I have one warm-up movement, one compound lift, and even just one accessory, I can do amazing things with just 3 exercises. Because you can do a warm-up activity that addresses something technical and physical and even mental. You can do a main lift variation that addresses technique, mental, and physical. And you can do a accessory movement that has potential to address all 3 as well. So I might only have 3 exercises, but I can target all 3 areas of physical, of overall development, which is physical, technical, and mental. I can potentially address them all in each of the exercises. So if you think of each one as a single unit of improvement. So if I do one thing to improve my technique, that's 1 point. If I do one thing to improve my physical, that's 1 point. If I do one thing to improve my mental, that's 1 point. Well, potentially for the first exercise, I can get 3 points. Second exercise, 3 points. Third exercise, 3 points. So I can get 9 points in just 3 exercises. Whereas typically people think of an exercise per point. So I'm going to do this for physical, this for technique, and this for mental. So every workout they do, they only get 3 points. Versus programming the way I'm explaining here, you can get 9 freaking points, and that's how you can progress faster and get more bang for your buck in your workouts. Okay, so the other thing we said was like the mental component. So we talked about technique and physical development. So the mental development is there are variations that help you get used to heavy workload. So typically where people break down mentally is under 1 rep max loads, very high testing loads. So like we said, is a squat walkout or a heavy lockout hold in bench press helps with that. Okay. You can also do lifting variations like main lift variations, for example, like reverse banding squats or deadlifts actually too, and bench pressing, where they just see heavy weights on the bar. They have to brace against that and get used to it and build confidence to it. So reverse banding helps a ton. You can also do paused squats. So if somebody kind of like never really squats the parallel, or they kind of like break down position parallel because they're afraid of parallel. They think, oh man, it's such a weak position, like I'm never going to be able to hold the weight there. Well, you can do paused squats and make them hold the weight for a really long time. So that's a way to kind of force mental progression. Okay, so there's a lot of techniques you can do for exercise selection that address mental component. The other thing you can do is do pre-workout mindset drills. So I have somebody I work with that we do something we call the attitude of gratitude. So before they go into a workout, and if they know they're going to do something really heavy, I have them say, like kind of like a prayer or a mantra, just something where they kind of like say to the universe or God or whatever, and they say, hey, you know what, I'm appreciative of the fact that I actually get to do this. I get to do something I love, and I get to do something really fun and challenging and something that's going to grow me as a person. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I don't want to miss it. I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to go into this workout, and I'm going to give it my best, and I'm going to crush this. So that really, really helps with overall kind of mindset in the workout.